The Galactic Military Academy floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower. Station Helix 9 was its name, and for 300 years it had trained the best warriors from across the galaxy. Soldiers from 47 different species had walked through its halls. Some became legends. Most were broken before they could graduate. Instructor was the reason many cadets failed. He was a reptilian species known for their cruelty and strength. He stood 7 feet tall with scales as black as the void between stars. His yellow eyes could make even the bravest warrior feel small. He had one goal in life: to destroy the weak before they could waste the Academy's time. Today was the first day for the new cadets. They stood in Training Hall 7, a massive room with walls of cold gray metal. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into shadows. 53 cadets stood in perfect lines, their backs straight and their eyes forward. They came from many worlds. Some had 4 arms, some had scales, some had fur, and one, standing near the end of the 3rd row, was human. Her name was Park. She was 22 years old, born in a small town in Korea on planet Earth. She was not tall. She had no claws, no armor on her skin, no venom in her teeth. By the standards of most species in the galaxy, she looked like prey. The other cadets had already noticed her. They whispered among themselves in languages she could not understand, but she did not need to understand their words to know what they were saying. Humans were new to the Galactic Union. They had only joined 15 years ago. Most aliens thought of them as soft, weak, and fragile. A mistake of evolution that somehow survived long enough to reach the stars. Kept her eyes forward and her face calm. She had heard worse things back on Earth. Words could not hurt her. The doors at the far end of the hall slammed open. Instructor walked in, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. His clawed feet clicked against the metal floor with each step. His long tail swept behind him like a weapon waiting to strike. Every cadet held their breath. Walked slowly down the rows, looking at each cadet with those terrible yellow eyes. He stopped in front of a tall with bright blue feathers. There was shaking. "You are afraid," said. His voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "Good. Fear will keep you alive. Stupidity will get you killed." He moved on. He stopped in front of a species with 4 arms and skin like rock. The tried to look brave. "You think your strength makes you special," growled. "It does not. I have broken stronger creatures than you." Finally he reached. He stopped. He stared down at her for a long moment, his eyes moving over her small frame. A low rumble came from his throat. It might have been a laugh. "Another human," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your kind bleeds too easily. Your bones break like dry sticks. Your skin tears like wet paper." He leaned closer, his hot breath washing over her face. "Perhaps you should return to your nursery world before you embarrass yourself." Did not move. She did not blink. She kept her eyes forward and her voice steady. "I am here to train, Instructor." His eyes narrowed. For a moment something flickered across his face. Annoyance, perhaps, or curiosity. Then it was gone, replaced by cold amusement. "Very well," he said. "Let us see what humans are made of." His hand moved faster than thought. One moment it was at his side. The next moment a combat knife was flying through the air, spinning end over end, aimed directly at its face. The hall went completely silent. Every cadet froze. The nearby made a small sound of horror. The knife was a blur of silver death, and there was no time to dodge, no time to scream, no time to do anything but die. His hand came up. Her fingers closed around the handle of the knife. The blade stopped 3 inches from her right eye. She had caught it perfectly, without cutting herself, without even seeming to try. The silence stretched on. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Slowly lowered the knife. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but her hand was steady. She turned the blade around and held it out too, handle first. "Your knife, Instructor." Did not take it. He stared at her with an expression she had never seen on a face before. It was not anger. It was not amusement. It was something else entirely. Something that looked almost like uncertainty. "How did you do that?" he asked. His voice was quieter now. Met his eyes. Reflexes, instructor, humans have them. Around them, the other cadets were whispering again. But this time, the whispers had a different tone. This time, they were not mocking her. They were afraid of her. Finally took the knife from her hand. He looked at it, then looked at her. For a long moment, he said nothing. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "humans are not as soft as they appear." He turned and walked back to the front of the hall. But as he went, noticed something that made her smile inside. For the first time since he had entered the room, Instructor was not walking like a predator. He was walking like someone who had just met one. News traveled fast on Station Helix 9. By the time the sun set on the station's artificial day cycle, everyone had heard the story. A human caught's blade. A human, of all species. The soft creatures from the little blue planet had done what no cadet had done in 50 years. In the officers' mess hall, Commander sat alone at a corner table. He was 41 years old, with a calm face and eyes that had seen too much. He was the only human serving on the station's command staff, and he had fought hard for that position. Now he was reading a report on his, and a small smile was playing on his lips. "She caught it," he murmured to himself. "They really have no idea what they are dealing with." A shadow fell across his table. He looked up to see Lieutenant, an officer with 4 arms and skin that glowed with soft blue light. She was his colleague, and on good days, something close to a friend. "May I sit?" she asked. Gestured to the empty chair, folded herself into it, her 4 arms crossing over her chest. "The whole station is talking about your human cadet," she said. "They say she caught's knife like it was a toy. Some are saying it was luck. Others are saying it was impossible." "It was neither," said. "It was simply human." Made a clicking sound with her tongue. "Commander, I have studied many species. Humans are not known for speed or strength. Your world is comfortable. Your bodies are fragile. No natural weapons, no armor, no." Stop held up his hand. "I have heard this speech 1,000 times, and every time it is wrong." He set down his and leaned forward. "Earth is not comfortable, Lieutenant. Earth is a death world." Laughed, her bioluminescent patches flickering with amusement. "A death world. Your oceans are liquid water. Your air is breathable. Your gravity is barely above standard. Compared to actual death worlds, Earth is a paradise." "Is it?" asked. "Tell me, Lieutenant, does your have hurricanes that can flatten cities? Does it have earthquakes that swallow mountains? Does it have volcanoes that block out the sun for years?" He paused. "Does your world have predators that never stopped evolving to kill you?" Was quiet now. "Humans did not survive by being strong," continued. "We survived by being stubborn. We are persistence predators. Do you know what that means?" "No." "It means we hunt by following our prey until it dies from exhaustion. We cannot run as fast as most animals. We cannot fight them with claws or teeth. So instead, we follow them. For hours, for days. We never stop. We never give up. And eventually, the prey collapses and we are still standing." He picked up his drink and took a slow sip. "That is what humans are, Lieutenant. We are the species that refuse to die. And that stubbornness is written into every cell of our bodies." Meanwhile, in the cadet barracks was sitting on her bunk. The room was small and simple, with 2 beds, 2 lockers, and a single window that showed the stars outside. Her bunkmate was, with soft purple feathers and large golden eyes, had been staring at for the past 10 minutes. "I do not understand," finally said. "How did you catch that knife? Your species does not have enhanced neural pathways. You do not have accelerated perception. It should have been impossible." Shrugged. "Adrenaline." "What is adrenaline?" "It is a chemical that our bodies make when we sense danger." Held up her hand and looked at it. "When a human is scared, our heart beats faster, Our muscles get stronger, our senses get sharper, and sometimes time seems to slow down. Feathers ruffled with confusion, time slows down. It feels that way. Everything around us seems to move more slowly, but we can move at normal speed. It only lasts for a few seconds, but in those seconds, we can do things that seem impossible. That sounds terrifying, whispered. Smiled, it is, but it has kept us alive for 200,000 years. Was quiet for a moment, then she asked, what else can humans do? Thought about it. We can heal from injuries that would kill other species. We can eat foods that are poisonous to most aliens. We can survive in extreme heat and extreme cold. We can go without sleep for days when we need to, and we can keep fighting even when we are badly hurt. She lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling. On Earth, everything wants to kill you. The weather wants to kill you. The animals want to kill you. The diseases want to kill you. Even the plants want to kill you. Humans survived because we learned to adapt to anything. We learned to be whatever we needed to be. Pulled her blanket around herself. I think I understand now why Instructor looked so surprised. Closed her eyes. He threw that knife expecting me to freeze or scream or die, but I am human. When something attacks us, we do not freeze. We fight back, every time, no matter what. Outside the window, the stars continued their slow rotation around the station. But inside the barracks, and in mess halls and training rooms across Helix 9, the whispers continued. Something had changed today. A small human woman had caught a flying knife, and nothing would ever be quite the same. The galaxy was beginning to understand what Earth had always known. Humans were not prey, they never had been. Instructor was not a creature who accepted defeat easily. The knife incident had embarrassed him in front of the entire cadet class, and he was determined to prove that it had been nothing more than luck. Over the following weeks, he pushed harder than any cadet in academy history. The first test was endurance. Cadets were made to run through corridors where the gravity changed every 100 meters. Light gravity, heavy gravity, crushing gravity that made every step feel like walking through mud. Most cadets struggled. Many collapsed, finished every run. Again would growl, and she would run again. The second test was sleep deprivation. Cadets were kept awake for days while being forced to complete complex tasks. Their minds became foggy. Their hands shook. Their eyes burned. By hour 60, most cadets were making dangerous mistakes. By hour 80, they were begging for rest. Lasted 96 hours. When she finally showed signs of fatigue, she had outlasted cadets from species that were supposed to need less sleep than humans. How? Demanded. Your species requires 8 hours of sleep per cycle. It is documented. Documented by who? Asked. Her voice was tired but steady. Humans have fought wars without sleeping for days. We have crossed oceans without rest. We have climbed mountains through the night. Sleep is a need, yes, but needs can be ignored when survival requires it. The third test was pain. Cadets were hooked up to machines that measured how much physical discomfort they could handle before their performance dropped. Species with multiple nervous systems scored well. Species with natural pain suppression scored even better. Scored higher than both. The medical officer, a four-armed named Thrum, stared at the results with disbelief. This makes no sense, he said. Humans have one of the most sensitive nervous systems in the known galaxy. You should have the lowest pain tolerance, not the highest. We feel pain, admitted. We feel it very clearly, but feeling pain and being stopped by pain are different things. She held up her arm, showing him a faded scar that ran from her elbow to her wrist. I got this when I was 15, fell off a mountain while hiking, broke my arm in 2 places. The bone was sticking out of my skin. Thrum's face twisted with disgust. And you survived. I did more than survive. I walked for 6 hours to reach help. The pain was terrible, but I kept walking because stopping meant dying. She lowered her arm. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. We have learned that pain is just information. It tells us something is wrong, but it does not control us. Word of her performance spread through the station. Cadets who had laughed at her now watched her with nervous eyes. Officers who had ignored her now asked questions about her species, and though he would never admit it, began to treat her differently. He still pushed her hard, but the cruelty in his voice had faded. It had been replaced by something that sounded almost like respect. Then came the survival examination. Pyrex 4 was a volcanic moon on the edge of the system. Its atmosphere was toxic. Its surface was covered with lava flows and ash fields. Temperatures could swing from boiling hot to freezing cold within hours. It was one of the most dangerous training grounds in the academy, and cadets were expected to survive there alone for one standard week. Was dropped on the moon's surface with minimal supplies, a water filter, a thermal blanket, an emergency beacon, and nothing else. The flew away, and she was alone under a sky the color of blood. She survived. She built shelters from volcanic rock. She found water in underground caves. She learned which plants were safe to eat and which would kill her. When a pack of local predators found her camp on day 4, she fought them off with a spear she had made from a sharpened stone and a broken tree branch. By day 3 of the examination, half the cadets had activated their emergency beacons and been evacuated. By day 5, only 12 remained. And on day 7, when the return to collect the survivors, walked back to the extraction point carrying someone on her back. His name was Doha Shin. He was another human, a cadet from the previous training cycle who had been assigned to a different drop zone. On day 6, he had fallen during a rock slide and broken his leg badly. He had activated his beacon, but a volcanic eruption had blocked the rescue ships from reaching him. Had found him by accident while searching for water. She could have left him. She could have focused on her own survival. Instead, she had splinted his leg, given him half of her remaining water, and carried him 40 kilometers across the deadliest terrain on the moon. When they reached the extraction point, the medical team rushed forward. His face was pale. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. She had burns on her arms from the hot ash and cuts on her legs from the sharp rocks, but she was still standing. "You carried him 40 kilometers, the medical officer gasped. "In that atmosphere with those injuries, how is that possible?" Looked at Doha, who was being loaded onto a stretcher. "He is human," she said simply. "We do not leave our own behind." Behind her, watching from the shadow of his ship, Instructor stood in silence. The contempt that had once filled his eyes was gone. In its place was something new, something that looked almost like wonder. He had spent his whole life believing that strength was measured in claws and fangs and armor. Now, for the first time, he was beginning to understand that true strength had nothing to do with any of those things. True strength was the will to keep going when everything said you should stop. And humans, it seemed, had more of that will than any species he had ever known. 3 months had passed since first stepped into Training Hall 7. She was no longer the unknown human that everyone underestimated. She had become something else, a legend in the making, a story that cadets whispered about in the dark. But legends, as was about to learn, were often born in blood. It started with a distress signal. A diplomatic vessel carrying peace delegates had been attacked by raiders near the outer rim. The attackers were the Syndicate, a brutal criminal organization that cared nothing for laws or treaties. They killed without mercy and took what they wanted. Station Helix 9 sent a rescue fleet immediately, but while the main forces were away, they made their true move. 300 raiders dropped out of hyperspace and attacked the station itself. The assault came without warning. One moment was in the training barracks reviewing combat tactics with her squad. The next moment the lights went out, alarms filled the air, and the whole station shook with explosions. "What is happening?" cried, her feathers standing on end. Before anyone could answer, the emergency broadcast crackled through the speakers. All personnel, this is Commander. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. All cadets report to emergency shelters. This is not a drill. But the shelters were on the other side of the station, and between squad and safety, there was only darkness and the sound of plasma fire. The squad moved quickly through the corridors. There were 12 of them, Doha, whose leg had healed but still carried a slight limp, and 9 others from various species. They had no weapons. Cadets were not allowed to carry weapons outside of training exercises. They made it halfway to the shelters before they ran into trouble. The soldiers appeared from a side corridor, their black armor gleaming in the emergency lights. There were 20 of them, maybe more, and they were armed with plasma rifles that could burn through metal walls. "Stop," the lead commanded. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 red eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness. "Surrender or die." The cadets froze, was shaking so badly that her feathers were falling out. One of the younger cadets, a small, started to cry. "We are going to die," whispered. "There is no way out." His mind was racing. She looked around the corridor, taking in every detail. Emergency lighting mounted on the ceiling. Maintenance hatches every 20 meters. Pipes running along the walls. A fire suppression system with sensors near the floor. "No," she said quietly, "we are not." She turned to Doha and grabbed his arm. "When I give the signal, take everyone and run to the next junction. Do not stop. Do not look back." "What are you going to do?" he asked. "What humans do best," she said, "survive." Before Doha could respond, stepped forward toward the soldiers. "I am the one you want," she called out. "I am the human who caught's blade. I am the one your commanders told you about. Take me and let the others go." The lead laughed. It was an ugly sound like metal scraping against stone. "We do not make deals with prey. We kill everything." He raised his rifle. "Moved." She reached up and tore the emergency light from the ceiling. The corridor plunged into darkness. At the same moment, she slammed her hand against the fire suppression panel on the wall. White coolant gas erupted from vents along the floor, filling the air with thick fog. "Now," she screamed. The cadets ran too, but not toward safety. She ran toward the... In the confusion and the fog, she was a ghost. They could not see her, could not track her, could not understand what was happening. She moved between them like smoke, using the darkness and the chaos as her weapons. She grabbed a rifle from one soldier and used it to smash the helmet of another. She kicked a third in the knee and heard the joint break with a satisfying crack. She found a maintenance panel and ripped out a handful of electrical cables, then used them to shock a fourth soldier until he stopped moving. They were screaming now. They fired wildly into the fog, hitting each other as often as they hit nothing. By the time the gas began to clear, half of them were down and the rest were backing away in fear. "What is she?" one of them shouted. "What is this thing?" Stepped out of the fog. Her face was bleeding from a cut above her eye. Her shoulder was burned where a plasma shot had grazed her, but her eyes were calm and cold. "I am human," she said, "and you made a very big mistake." She attacked again. This time she was not alone. The other cadets had not run to safety. They had circled back, following her lead, using the tactics she had taught them. They fought with broken panels and torn cables in their bare hands. They fought like humans, messy, brutal, and utterly without mercy. When the reinforcements finally arrived, led by Commander himself, they found 12 cadets standing in a corridor filled with bodies. 23 soldiers lay on the ground, unconscious or groaning in pain. Was at the center of it all. She had a plasma burn across her shoulder, 3 cracked ribs and blood running down her face. But she was still standing. She was always still standing. "You did this?" Commander asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Shook her head. "We did this," she said, gesturing to her squad. "Humans work better in groups. We taught them that." Behind the commander, Instructor emerged from the shadows. He had been part of the reinforcement team, and he had seen everything. He walked slowly toward, his yellow eyes unreadable. "I was wrong about your species," he said, his voice low and rough. "You are not fragile, you are not weak." He paused. "You are something far more dangerous than I ever imagined." Meta's gaze without flinching. "We are survivors," she said. "That is all we have ever been, and we will do whatever it takes to keep surviving." The station's alarms were still ringing. The battle was not over yet. But in that corridor, surrounded by fallen enemies and standing beside beings from a dozen different worlds, Park had proven something that the entire galaxy would soon come to understand. Humans were not prey. They were not victims. They were the children of a death world, forged by millions of years of struggle and suffering. And when they pushed back harder. The grand atrium of Station Helix 9 was the largest room on the station. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Its walls were lined with flags from every member world of the Galactic Union. And today, for the first time in history, a new flag hung among them, a simple blue banner with a pale circle at its center. The flag of Earth. The graduation ceremony had drawn crowds from across the galaxy. Ships had come from distant systems, carrying diplomats and generals and curious citizens who wanted to see for themselves. The story of the human cadets had spread far and wide. Everyone wanted to witness the species that had fought off raiders with their bare hands. Stood at the front of the graduating class. Her uniform was crisp and clean, decorated with medals she had earned through blood and pain. Beside her stood Doha, his limp now completely gone, and 3 other human cadets who had enrolled after hearing her story. Behind them stood the rest of the class, with her purple feathers gleaming, and dozens of others who had learned to see humans differently. High Admiral stood at the podium. He was ancient even by the standards of his long-lived species, his skin like cracked leather and his eyes like distant stars. He had commanded fleets in wars that happened before Earth had electricity. He had seen empires rise and fall, and now he was looking at with something that might have been awe. "For 300 years," he began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber, "this academy has produced warriors. We have trained the strongest, the fastest, the deadliest soldiers in the known galaxy. We have always believed that we knew what made a great warrior." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "We were wrong." A murmur ran through the crowd, raised his hand for silence. "When humans first joined the Galactic Union, we did not know what to make of them. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. By every measure we used, they should have been the weakest species in the galaxy." His ancient eyes found in the crowd. "But our measures were wrong." He pressed a button on the podium, and the air above the stage filled with light. Holographic images appeared, footage from the Academy's security systems. The crowd watched in silence as they saw Catch the Knife. They watched her run through changing gravity without falling. They watched her survive on Pyrex 4. They watched her fight through a corridor full of soldiers with nothing but darkness and determination. "This is what humans are," said. "Not weak, not fragile, not prey. They are the survivors of a world that tried to kill them every single day for millions of years, and they refused to die." The images faded, stepped out from behind the podium and walked toward. The crowd held its breath. "Cadet Park," he said, "step forward." Stepped forward. Her heart was pounding, but her face was calm. She had learned long ago how to hide her fear. "When you first came to this academy," said, "Instructor threw a knife at your face. He expected you to freeze. He expected you to fail. Instead, you caught the blade and handed it back to him." A thin smile crossed his ancient face. "In that moment, you taught him something he had never learned in 10,000 years of training warriors. You taught him that true strength is not about size or speed or natural weapons. True strength is the will to survive, no matter what." He reached into his uniform and pulled out a small metal badge. It was shaped like a star with a circle at its center, the symbol of the elite vanguard, the most respected military unit in the entire Galactic Union. From this day forward, announced, Cadet Park will serve as the first human officer in the elite vanguard. She has earned this honor through courage, determination, and a spirit that refuses to break. He pinned the badge to her uniform. The crowd erupted in applause, was cheering so loudly that her feathers were standing straight up. Doha was grinning like a fool. Even Commander, standing in the officers' section, allowed himself a small smile. But was not finished. "There is one more announcement," he said, raising his hand for silence. "The Galactic Council has reviewed the performance of human cadets over the past year. Based on their findings, they have reached a decision." The atrium went completely quiet. From this day forward, humanity is no longer a provisional member of the Galactic Union. They are full partners with all the rights and responsibilities that come with that status. His voice rose. "Welcome, humans, to the community of stars. You have earned your place among us." The applause this time was thunderous. It shook the walls. It rattled the flags. It seemed to fill the entire station with sound and joy. After the ceremony found herself standing at a viewport looking out at the stars. The crowd had finally dispersed. The speeches were over. The celebration was winding down, but she was not ready to leave yet. Footsteps approached behind her. She turned to see Instructor walking toward her. He looked different now. The cruelty was gone from his eyes. In its place was something that looked like respect, or perhaps even friendship. "I have trained 10,000 warriors," he said. "I have broken most of them. I have made the rest into soldiers." He stopped beside her and looked out at the stars. "But I have never met anyone quite like you." Smiled. "Thank you, Instructor." "I threw that knife expecting to watch you fail," he admitted. "I wanted to prove that humans were as weak as everyone said. Instead, you proved that I was the weak one. I was weak in my thinking. I could not see past my own assumptions." He extended his clawed hand, a gesture of respect among his people. "It will be an honor to serve beside humans in the future." Took his hand without hesitation. "The honor is ours." They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the stars spin slowly past the viewport. Then Doha appeared, along with the rest of the squad. "So," Doha said with a grin, "what happens now?" Looked at her friends, at the humans and aliens who had fought beside her, who had learned from her, who had become her family in this strange place among the stars. "Now," she said, "we show them what else humans can do." She turned back to the viewport. Somewhere out there, beyond the light of familiar stars, there were worlds that had never heard of Earth. There were species that had never met a human. There were challenges that no one had ever faced before. Park, the small woman from Korea who had caught a knife and changed the galaxy, was ready for all of it. Because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, they never gave up. And they were just getting started.